In the harsh Wyoming territory of 1885, where the wind howls with the ghosts of shattered hopes, Clara Hayes endures her husband's brutal hand for a fault. She never chose her WAM's failure to bear a child. The dawn breaks over Redstone, a speck of a town carved from dust and dreams, its golden light spilling across the cracked plains. Clara, 38, sits on the sagging porch of a weathered cabin, her face marked with bruises that bloom like dark flowers under her weary eyes. Once a school teacher whose voice brought warmth to these barren streets, she's now a shadow of herself, her spirit battered by years of Tom Hayes' whiskey-fueled rage. Her fingers trace a tattered red ribbon, a relic from a life when she still believed in tomorrows. The cabin door slams open, and Tom staggers out, his boots grinding dirt into the porch, his eyes, bloodshot and mean, fix on her. "You're no wife, Clara," he snarls, his voice cutting like a dull blade. "No son, no legacy, just a useless woman." His hand rises, casting a shadow across her face. But Clara's gaze doesn't waver. She's grown accustomed to the sting, her heart calloused but not yet dead. The town around them, its crooked saloon, its lonely church steeple piercing the sky, stands silent, bound by the unwritten law of the West. A man's home is his castle, and no one dares breach its walls, no matter the screams within. A small voice pierces the morning air. "Ma'am, you dropped this." Lily Carter, 10 years old, with braids tight as a lasso and eyes bright as the sunrise, steps forward, holding out Clara's ribbon. Her small hands tremble slightly, not from fear but from a kindness too pure for this hard land. Behind her, her brother Sam, 14, lean as a fence post, grabs her arm. "Lily, get back here," he hisses, his gaze flicking to Tom, wary of the man's temper. Across the dirt street, their father, James Carter, leans against his horse, a sturdy bay tied to a hitching post. At 40, James carries the weight of a Union soldier's past, his limp a reminder of battles fought and a wife lost to childbirths. Cruel hand. His weathered hat casts a shadow over eyes that see too much. Clara's bruises, Tom's clenched fists, the town's averted gazes. His hand rests on the revolver at his hip, fingers twitching, but he stays rooted. What holds him back? A man who's faced cannon fire and death. Why does he hesitate before this drunken bully? Clara meets his eyes for a heartbeat, her breath catching at the flicker of something, pity, perhaps, or something deeper before she looks away, ashamed of her own reflection in his gaze. The town of Redstone stirs, its pulse quickening with the day. Horses snort, their hooves kicking up clouds of dust that dance in the morning light. From the saloon, a piano's lonesome notes drift, mingling with the clatter of a wagon rolling past. Clara rises, her faded calico dress catching on a splintered board. She brushes it off, her movements slow but deliberate, and walks to her mare. A gray horse is worn as its rider. As she mounts, Tom's voice follows her, low and venomous. "Don't you dare run, Clara. You're mine." She doesn't answer, her hands steady on the reins, but her heart pounds like a war drum. Lily's voice echoes in her mind. "You drop this," and Clara's fingers brush the ribbon, now tied loosely in her dark hair. It's a small act, tying that ribbon, but it feels like raising a flag she thought she'd lost. She rides toward town, the mare's hooves thumping a rhythm against the earth, each step carrying her further from the cabin, but not from its weight. James watches her go, his jaw tight under a day's stubble. He turns to Sam, his voice low, rough as gravel. "Keep an eye on her, son. Don't let her out of your sight." Sam nods, his young face etched with a seriousness that belongs to men, not boys. Lily clutches her brother's hand, her eyes following Clara's silhouette against the rising sun. The ribbon in Clara's hair flutters, a splash of red against the gray plains, like a spark refusing to die in a land that buries hope. As Clara rides into the heart of Redstone, the wind carries the faint scent of sagebrush and the promise of a reckoning yet to come. Clara Hayes rides into the heart of Redstone, her mare's hooves drumming a steady beat against the hard-packed dirt, each step stirring clouds of dust that dance like restless spirits. In the Wyoming dawn, the red ribbon in her hair, tied with trembling fingers, flutters against the gray of her faded calico dress. a quiet defiance against Tom's venomous words still echoing in her mind. "You're mine." She halts outside the general store, its warped wooden sign swaying with a mournful creak in the morning breeze. The scent of molasses and tobacco spills from the open door, but it's the sharp sting of whispered gossip that cuts deeper. "Baron." "Woman," a matron in a starched bonnet hisses to her companion, her eyes sliding over Clara like she's a stain on the town's honor. "No wonder Tom's mean as a cornered rattler." Another mutters, her voice loud enough to ensure Clara hears. Clara's hands tighten on the reins, her face a mask of stoic endurance, but inside, shame burns like a coal in her chest. She was once Redstone's schoolteacher, her chalk-dusted fingers shaping the futures of children now grown. Now, she's the woman who failed to give her husband a son, the woman whose stillborn daughter haunts her dreams, the woman the town pities but leaves to her fate. She dismounts, tying her mare to a hitching post, and steps into the store, her boots soft against the creaking floorboards. Inside, the air is thick with the hum of commerce and judgment. Clara picks up a small sack of flour, her bruised hands steady despite the weight of eyes on her back. As she reaches for a tin of baking soda, a small voice pipes up. "Miss Clara, you dropped this." Lily Carter, 10 years old, with braids as tight as a cowboy's lasso and eyes sparkling like the North Star, holds out a piece of peppermint candy, slipped from her own pocket. "You look like you need something sweet," she says, her grin bright enough to shame the sun. Clara's breath catches, her fingers brushing Lily's as she takes the candy. For the first time in what feels like years, a smile tugs at her lips, fragile as a spider's web but warm as a hearth. "Thank you, Lily," she murmurs, her voice soft, almost swallowed by the store's din. Lily bounces on her toes, chattering about a dog-eared book she's been wrestling with. "It's got words I can't figure out." "Miss Clara, you used to teach, didn't you? Could you help me read it?" Clara hesitates, the ghost of her old schoolhouse, its windows boarded, its laughter silenced rising like a lump in her throat. But Lily's hopeful gaze pulls her back, and she nods. "I'd like that, sweetheart," she says, a flicker of purpose stirring in her heart, like a spark catching in dry grass. Outside, Lily's brother Sam lounges against the store's wall, his lanky frame taut as a bowstring, his eyes scanning the street like a young gunslinger waiting for trouble. At 14, he's too young for the hardness in his jaw, too old for the innocence Lily still clings to. "Lily, quit bothering her," he calls, his tone gruff but laced with care. Clara steps into the sunlight, kneeling to meet Lily's eyes. "You remind me of a girl I used to know," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. Sam shuffles closer, his boots scuffing the dirt. "Our ma liked books too," he says, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "She died when Lily was born. Pa don't talk about her, but I remember her reading to me." Clara's heart twists, the shared ache of loss binding them like a silent vow. She touches Sam's shoulder, a fleeting gesture, and says, "I'd love to see that book, Lily. Maybe we can read it together." Sam's eyes meet hers, weary but grateful, and Clara feels a warmth she thought Tom had beaten out of her. Hoofbeats rumble down the street, steady and purposeful, breaking the moment. James Carter rides up on his bay horse, its coat gleaming under the rising sun. At 40, he carries the scars of a Union soldier, his limp from a Confederate bullet, his eyes heavy with the weight of a wife lost to childbirth. He tips his weathered hat to Clara, his voice low and warm, like a fire on a cold night. "Miss Clara, I'm short-handed at the ranch. Could use someone to mend fences. Pays a fair wage." His gray eyes hold hers, seeing past her bruises to the woman she once was, and Clara feels a flush creep up her neck, a sensation she'd forgotten. It's not just the work, it's the way he offers it, like a lifeline tossed to a drowning soul. She nods, her throat tight. "I'll be there, Mr. Carter," she says, her voice steadier than she feels. James gives a small smile, then turns to his children. "Sam, Lily, let's head home." As they ride off, Lily waves, and Clara mounts her mare, the candy's sweetness lingering on her tongue. She rides toward James's ranch, the Wyoming plains stretching wide and wild, sagebrush and distant mountains framing a world both cruel and beautiful. At the Carter Ranch, The sun climbs high, its heat pressing down like a heavy hand. Clara works along a stretch of split-rail fence, her hands deft as she drives nails into weathered wood. The rhythm soothing her frayed nerves, her bruises throb, but the work feels honest, grounding. Nearby, James shows Sam how to coil a lasso, his movements patient despite the boy's fumbling. "Keep your wrist loose, son," he says, his voice calm but firm. Lily sits under a lone cottonwood tree, her book open, reading aloud in halting words. "But Adventure," she stumbles, and Clara pauses, leaning on her hammer. "Adventure," she corrects gently, walking over. "Try it again, Lily." The girl beams, and Clara sits beside her, guiding her through the page. Their laughter rings across the ranch, light and free, like a breeze sweeping through a parched land. Sam watches, a rare smile softening his face, and James's eyes linger on Clara, a quiet respect in his gaze. Over a midday break, James hands Clara a canteen, their fingers brushing, sending a jolt through her. "You're good with them," he says, his voice rough but kind. "Reminds me of my Sarah. She had a way with kids." Clara's eyes drop to the canteen, her heart aching. "I lost a child," she confesses, the words spilling out like water. "From a cracked jug. A girl, born too soon. Tom, he never forgave me." James's face softens, his own grief rising to meet hers. "War took pieces of me," he says, touching his bad leg. "Losing Sarah took more. These kids are my reason to keep going." Their shared pain weaves a fragile bond, unspoken but strong, like a rope stretched across a chasm. Clara sips from the canteen, the cool water easing the dust in her throat, and for a moment, the ranch feels like a place she could belong. The peace shatters with the thunder of hoofbeats. The Wyoming sky turns black as pitch, a sandstorm roaring across the plains like a beast unleashed, its howl drowning Redstone in a maelstrom of dust and fury. Clara Hayes spurs her mare through the blinding grit, the beast's hooves faltering as wind tears at them both. The red ribbon in Clara's hair lashes wildly, a defiant streak of color against her dust-streaked dress. But Tom's words, "You'll crawl back to me," claw deeper than the storm's sting. She's bound for his cabin, driven by fear and duty, but the tempest's wrath veers her off course, pushing her toward the only refuge she knows, James Carter's ranch. The horizon vanishes, sagebrush and fence posts swallowed by swirling sand. As Clara's mare stumbles to the ranch's gate, the lone cottonwood tree bends low, its branches groaning like a warning. Clara dismounts, her legs unsteady, her dress clinging wet with sweat and dust. She staggers toward the barn, its weathered planks rattling as if the storm means to rip them apart. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of hay and fear. Lily Carter huddles in a corner, her small hands clutching her dog-eared book, her braids dusted with sand. "Miss Clara," she cries, scrambling to her feet, her arms wrapping tight around Clara's waist like a lifeline. Sam, 14 and weary, bolts the barn door against the storm's assault, his young face carved with worry. "'Twas out there, ridden through this mess to find you," he says, his voice steady but laced with dread. Clara's heart lurches. James, braving the storm for her, a woman whose bruise is mark her as broken, yet whose spirit he sees with eyes that cut through her shame. The barn trembles, the wind screaming like a banshee, shaking the rafters and rattling the lantern that swings wildly, casting shadows that dance like ghosts. Clara kneels beside Lily, brushing sand from the girl's tear-streaked cheeks. "You're safe now, sweetheart," she whispers, her voice a soft anchor in the chaos, though her own heart races. Sam paces, his boots kicking up wisps of hay, his eyes flicking to the bolted door. "I saw Tom's horse on the ridge before the storm hit," he says, his hands clenched into fists. "He's combing for you, Miss Clara." Fear coils in Clara's gut, but the ribbon in her hair, tangled and fierce, reminds her of the fire she's rekindled, the spark she tied into place against Tom's cruelty. She pulls Lily closer, the girl's warmth a shield against the cold dread creeping up her spine. She's not just fighting for herself now, but for these children who've given her a glimpse of hope, for the woman she used to be. The barn door shudders, not from the storm but from a force more vicious, more human. It bursts open, and Tom Hayes staggers in, his coat flapping like the wings of a carrion bird, his eyes bloodshot with whiskey and rage. "Clara," he bellows, his voice slicing through the storm's roar. "You think you can hide from me?" He lurches forward, his boots heavy on the hay-strewn floor, and grabs Lily's arm, yanking her from Clara's embrace. The girl cries out, her book tumbling into the dirt, as Tom holds her like a bargaining chip. "You're comin' home, or this brat pays for your betrayal." Clara rises, her hands trembling, but her voice steady as a gunslinger's aim. "Let her go, Tom," she says, stepping forward, her eyes locked on his. She reads the cowardice beneath his bluster, the weakness he's buried under years of whiskey and spite. "You're no man to threaten a child." Tom's grip tightens on Lily, who whimpers, her small frame shaking. He draws his revolver, its barrel glinting in the lantern's flickering light, and points it at Clara. "You're mine, woman. Always will be." Sam lunges forward, his young face fierce, but Clara raises a hand, stopping him. She steps closer, her boots deliberate on the creaking floor, her words sharp as a blade. "You're nothing, Tom Hayes. You failed in the gold. Mine's failed in this town, failed as a husband. You blame me for your empty life, but I'm not the one who's barren." Her voice cuts deep, each word a strike at his pride. Tom's face twists, his revolver wavering, and Clara presses on, her courage rising like the storm outside. "You want a son. You couldn't raise a dog, let alone a child. All you've got is your fist and your bottle, and they've both failed. You." The barn falls silent, save for the wind's howl, as Tom's hand shakes, the gun dipping, his eyes flickering with the shame she's laid bare. Sam seizes the moment, pulling a crumpled paper from his pocket, a letter he found in the boarded-up schoolhouse, its ink faded but words clear. "Read this, Tom," he says, his voice trembling with defiance. "It's from Doc Wilson, from the smallpox winter of '78. Says Miss Clara saved 30 kids, including me, when you were too drunk to lift a finger." The twist lands like a thunderbolt, Clara's heroism, buried beneath Tom's abuse, and the town's silence, shines through, a beacon in the storm. Tom's eyes widen, the letter's truth stripping him bare. Clara steps closer, her voice softer now, but no less fierce. "I saved lives, Tom. I saved yours, and you repay me with this." She gestures to her bruised face, her words a mirror. To his cowardice, Lily's sobs quiet, her eyes on Clara, wide with awe. Outside, the storm roars louder, a window in the ranch house shattering with a crash that echoes the breaking of Tom's resolve. A shadow moves beyond the barn door, silent and steady, and Clara senses it. James, out there in the dust, coming for them. The door creaks open, and James Carter steps in, his revolver drawn but held low, his limp barely noticeable in the storm's chaos. His weathered hat casts a shadow over gray eyes that burn with a soldier's fire, tempered by a father's fear. "Put the gun down, Hayes," he says, his voice calm as a still pond, but carrying the weight of a man who's faced death and won. "Let my daughter go." Tom laughs, a jagged, desperate sound, swinging the revolver toward James. "You think you're her savior, cripple? She's mine till the day she dies." Clara's heart pounds, but she sees her chance. "Tom," she says, her voice cutting through like a whip, "you remember that winter? I carried this town through hell while you hid in a bottle. You're not my master, you're not even a man." Her words hit harder than any bullet, and Tom's arm falters, the revolver dipping as shame floods his face. James moves like lightning, tackling Tom to the ground, the gun skittering across the floor into the hay. No shots are fired. The storm itself is the battle, its fury a mirror to Clara's inner fire. The Wyoming dawn breaks gentle, the sandstorm's fury spent, leaving Redstone bathed in a soft golden glow that feels like forgiveness. Clara Hayes sits on a hay bale in James Carter's barn, her hands wrapped round Lily's dog-eared book, its pages still dusted with the storm's grit. The red ribbon in her hair hangs loose, its edges frayed, but holding fast, a quiet testament to the fire she's reclaimed. Lily curls beside her, asleep, her small chest rising and falling, her braids tangled from the night's chaos. Sam leans against the barn wall, his young face etched with exhaustion, but fierce with loyalty. the rope still coiled in his hands from tying Tom Hayes. Tom lies bound in the corner, his head bowed, his whiskey-soaked bravado drained by Clara's words and the letter that laid bare his shame. The barn door stands open, letting in the cool morning air, scented with sagebrush, and the promise of a new day. Outside, the plains stretch wide, their dust settled, the cottonwood tree standing, tall as if bowing to Clara's victory. She traces the letter's faded ink. Doc Wilson's words from the smallpox winter of '78, praising her for saving 30 lives, including Sam's. The weight of her past heroism settles over her, not as pride, but as a reminder of the woman she buried beneath Tom's cruelty. James Carter steps into the barn, his boots soft on the hay-strewn floor, his weathered hat low over eyes that carry both relief and resolve. His limp is more pronounced now, the storm's toll heavy on his war-scarred leg, but his presence fills the space like a steady fire. He kneels beside Clara, his voice low and warm, like a hymn sung under starlight. "You did good, Clara. You saved my girl." His gaze flicks to Lily, then back to Clara, and for a moment, the world narrows to the space between them. Clara's throat tightens, her fingers clutching the letter. "I didn't save her alone," she says, her voice soft, but steady. "You and Sam, you gave me something to fight for." James's lips twitch, not quite a smile, but his eyes soften, seeing past her bruises to the strength she's rediscovered. He stands, offering her a hand, but Clara rises on her own, her knees steady, her heart no longer cowering. She tucks the letter into her dress pocket, next to Lily's candy wrapper, small tokens of a life she's beginning to claim. Outside, the ranch stirs with the morning's rhythm. Sam leads Lily to the house, her book clutched tight, her small hand waving back at Clara. James and Clara walk to the porch, where a fire crackles in a pit, its warmth chasing the dawn's chill. They sit, the silence between them heavy with unspoken truths. Clara breaks it first, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was broken, James. Tom made me believe it, my body, my worth, all of it." She touches the ribbon, its red faded but defiant. "I lost a daughter, born too soon. I thought that was my end." James stares into the fire, his jaw tight, his own pain rising to meet hers. "I lost Sarah in childbirth," he says, his voice rough as gravel. "Blamed myself every day since. Thought if I'd been stronger, faster, I could have saved her. But these kids, Sam, Lily, they're my reason to keep going. And you." He pauses, his eyes meeting hers, raw and unguarded. "You're stronger than any storm I've seen, Clara." The words settle deep, like rain on parched earth, and Clara feels a warmth she hasn't known in years, not love yet, but a bond forged in shared scars. The moment shifts as hoofbeats echo from the road, soft at first, then urgent. Redstone's townsfolk ride up, their faces a mix of shame and resolve. Men in dusty hats, women clutching shawls, led by Doc Wilson, his white beard stark against the morning light. Sam's revelation of Clara's heroism has spread, the letters, truth a spark that's lit the town's conscience. Doc dismounts, his eyes heavy with regret. "Clara," he says, his voice trembling, "we failed you, let you suffer under Tom's hand, thinking it wasn't our place. But that letter, your courage in '78, it shames us all." He hands her a folded paper, signed by the townsfolk, offering her the old schoolhouse to reopen as her own. "Teach again," he says. "This town needs you." The twist lands like a quiet thunderclap. The town, once silent, now rallies to right its wrong, giving Clara a path to independence. She takes the paper, her hands steady, her eyes glistening not with tears but with purpose. "I'll do it," she says, her voice clear. "Not for you, but for the kids who need it." Tom stirs in the barn, his voice a low growl as a deputy hauls him to his feet. "You'll be alone, Clara." He spits, but the words lack venom, his defeat sealed by the town's awakening. The deputy leads him away, promising a cell in Laramie, where justice waits for men who break more than the law. Clara watches him go, her heart unburdened, the weight of his cruelty lifting like dust in the wind. She turns to James, who's watching the horizon, his hand resting on the porch rail. "I was afraid," he admits, his voice low. Afraid if I fought Tom, I'd lose Sam and Lily. But you showed me courage ain't just drawing a gun at standing tall when you're scared. Clara nods, her fingers brushing the ribbon, her resolve solid as the Wyoming earth. Lily runs out, her book in hand, and tugs at Clara's skirt. You're like a mama to me, she says, her voice small but the Wyoming sun climbs high, painting the redstone plains in hues of gold and amber, a canvas of hope stretching as far as the eye can see. Clara Hayes rides her mare at a steady pace, the schoolhouse paper and Lily's candy wrapper tucked close in her pocket, the red ribbon in her hair catching the breeze like a flag of victory. Her bruises, though still tender, no longer define her. They're mere shadows against the fire she's reclaimed. Beside her, James Carter walks, his limp softened by the morning's calm, his weathered hat tilted back to reveal gray eyes that carry a quiet pride. Sam and Lily trail behind, Sam's lanky frame straight with purpose, Lily clutching her book, her braids bouncing with each step. The plains hum with life sagebrush whispering in the wind, a hawk circling above, the distant clatter of redstone waking to a new day. Clara's heart beats steady, no longer caged by Tom's cruelty, but lifted by the promise of the schoolhouse, a chance to rebuild what she thought was lost. The townsfolk's offer, born of shame and her long-buried heroism, lies heavy in her hands, a weight she's ready to carry. A lone rider approaches from the horizon, his horse kicking up a thin trail of dust, a leather satchel slung across his shoulder. He's young, his face weathered by the plains, his eyes sharp with purpose. He dismounts, bowing slightly, and hands Clara a letter sealed with the territorial governor's mark. Miss Clara Hayes, he says, his voice clear. This comes from Cheyenne. Clara breaks the seal, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest. The letter unfolds a truth as vast as the Wyoming sky. The governor, moved by tales of her smallpox heroism in '78, grants her a parcel of land under the Homestead Act of 1862, a rare honor for a woman alone. The words blur before her eyes, not with tears, but with a vision of what could be. She looks to the plains, imagining a schoolhouse rising from the earth, its bell ringing for children like Lily and Sam, a legacy not born of blood but of heart. James reads over her shoulder, his breath catching. That's yours, Clara, he says, his voice rough with awe. A piece of this land, earned by your own hand. The rider pulls a small object from his satchel, wrapped in soft deerskin. This came with it, he says, handing it to Clara. She unwraps it, revealing a carved Comanche totem, a wooden figure of a horse, its lines worn smooth by time. A note tucked beneath it reads, "From Black Wolf, whose son you saved." The twist lands like a soft wind. During the smallpox winter, Clara nursed a Comanche boy back to health, a debt now honored by his father, a leader among his people. The totem, a symbol of gratitude in Comanche culture, ties her to the land's deeper history, a bridge between her past and the future she's building. Clara's fingers trace the carving, her heart swelling with a truth she'd forgotten. Her worth was never tied to bearing a child, but to the lives she's touched. She looks at Lily, who's watching with wide eyes, and says, "This is for you." One day, Lily beams, hugging her book tighter, and Sam nods, his young face glowing with respect. Clara turns to James, her voice steady, but rich with emotion. "I don't need to birth a child to leave a legacy," she says, the words a vow to herself, to the plains, to the future. James meets her gaze, his hand brushing hers. Not a lover's touch, but a partner's, a promise of support unspoken. "But sure, we'll build that school, Clara," he says. "Me, Sam, Lily, we're with you." The children nod, their silhouettes against the golden plains, a family not bound by blood but by choice. Clara mounts her mare, the totem and letter in her pocket, and rides toward the site of her new land, where the foundation of a schoolhouse will soon rise. The plains stretch wide, fierce and unyielding, their beauty a mirror to Clara's heart's guard. But hold on as the sun crests the horizon. Clara's voice carries over the wind, soft but resolute. "This is my home now." The camera pans across the plains, lingering on the totem in her hand, the ribbon in her hair, the schoolhouse site marked by a single stake in the earth. The story ends not with a happily ever after, but with a beginning. Clara, Free at last, her scars a map of battles won, her future a horizon as vast as Wyoming itself. For every soul who's ever felt broken, Clara's tale whispers, "You are enough." Like and subscribe for more stories of the West, where courage rises from the dust. In the comments, tell us, what legacy would you carve in the wild frontier?